Awesome introduction. I first have to break out of this because actually IBM Watson messed up my slides. But we're back. Can you still do another talk? Yes. I mean, I'm in between you and coffee. That's probably the worst thing to do. But I hear you laughing. That's good. You're still awake. Like all eyes on the stage. Perfect. So I said before, and that's probably been the best introduction to this talk ever. So thank you for that. You really boiled it down. My name is Jay. I'm based out of Berlin, Germany. It's the Berlin Posse speaking right after Ray. On my day job, I work on the Adobe XD team. And besides that day job, I push non-for-profits forward, two of them actually. One of that is OpenDeviceLab.com, which is here to spawn and to help locate places where people can test against real devices and do that for free. And the other one is the Berlin chapter of the Interaction Design Association, where we are fostering knowledge exchange across a community of experts and novices. Speaking about community, one thing I just recently launched out of my day job is the so-called XDI team, which is a team of active freelance designers that are now extending the XD team in community outreach and in giving back to communities by speaking at conferences, teaching workshops, and by running premium training for our customers. In my free time, I enjoy building furniture for our house and our garden. And 2 years ago, our third kid was born. And while juggling around the stuff around our house to make room for baby boy, my partner had the idea of making a bunk bed for our two elder daughters. We sat down to define the functionality that piece of furniture should cover, which turned out to be two guardrailed beds for the girls, including a ladder, a guest bed, huge drawers for toys, a bookcase, and a pull-out table for our puzzle queen. Because why did that idiot ask for their wishes in the first place? We took a look at available out-of-the-box solutions, which really didn't meet our requirements at all. We took a look at what others built in terms of custom kids' beds, which helped in terms of inspiration and to do the necessary user research with our kids, and to also clearly identify what we're not going to do. Look at this design. It says, here's a design for kids based on the Velociraptor cage from the first Jurassic Park film. The box shape and ladder makes for a perfect bunk bed. I'm not that convinced, Dave. Anyway, working in high tech is great, but those digital things I do, well, that's all pretty virtual stuff. My work doesn't bring up things that I could touch with my hands or show to my kids, like, look, that's something Dad has made, right? And that is among the reasons why I love to find some balance in working with wood. Ideate, plan, go out and select raw materials at the wood shop. Turn a selection of 1.5 tons of this into something like this, just to end up with something as simple, durable, and solid like this. It's a bit like the IKEA effect, but totally different. And before attempting to create that bunk bed, I had built less complex pieces of furniture. And here's another example that came out of the same pile of raw wood and went from here to there to that unique and tailor-made solution for our master bathroom. Before you can build this, you need a design and detailed specifications. And in the past, I used to sketch my plans with pen and paper. And I'm really bad at drawing and writing. So more complicated pieces of a project needed several detailed drawings. And that's where I typically took my pen and paper work to OmniGraffle, to draw the project from multiple angles. Anyhow, before you can begin to format the board or even go out and select materials at the shop, you have to create a piece list or a part list, which I did in Excel. But all those documents were really never connected to each other. And while designing a project, whenever I realized a more fundamental change was needed, too often I had to examine everything and to draw all those plans again. While I fleshed out the raw idea for that bunk bed using pen and paper, it dawned at me that my old patchwork of tools would not cut it for this thing. Also, this bunk bed, drawer, bookcase, guest bed, puzzle table, ladder thing was far too complex to build it off of a multitude of 2D drawings. But I had become so familiar with my cumbersome workflow. And yes, I did try to switch to C8D, to computer-aided drawing tools before, but I really never figured out how that works. Up until that day when I came across a YouTube video of a carpenter explaining SketchUp through the eyes and hands of a carpenter. And with that narrative, I immediately understood how to use that tool for my woodworking needs, and I began to design the bunk bed in 3D. It took me just a week, and I had managed to design everything in one tool, in one file, without the added friction and error potential of a multitude of disconnected documents. I was able to prototype and to show the intended outcome, to validate my ideas with my partner in that one tool. And then I could even take my 3D design into the workshop, pull out the specs to transform it into the 197 unique parts I needed to create to build the bunk bed. So, any of you have ever come across this hilarious article by Keaton Herzer? Did you see that article before? A couple. So Keaton summarizes the ideal design workflow for us. And in Keaton's article, your workflow begins with pen and paper. You'd take pictures of your sketches and make them clickable using POP. But hey, wireframes are needed, so off to OmniGraffle. But dang, a drop-down menu is required, so where are you, Balsamiq? Let's rebuild all those wireframes with you. You realize you dislike Balsamiq, so you reattempt the same task using Xure. You realize you also dislike Xure, so why not jump to Illustrator and a wireframing kit for $89? You export your wireframes as a PNG and share them via InVision with your team, just to wake up the next morning and to cry into your breakfast bowl because of all the mean comments your team has left on your prototype. At some points, the wireframes are signed off, so off to Sketch to work on the visual design. Now, export your hi-fi design as a PNG and import it into Flinto. But your stakeholder doesn't want to install the Flinto app, so off to Principal to make those screens interactive. Well, and Keaton goes on with that for another while. And while this article really is fun and will probably make you laugh out loud, the ugly reality, ladies and gentlemen, that this is really all about is that rather inefficient, cumbersome, error-prone workflow involving a patchwork of software tools that are creating a multitude of disconnected files, which are probably all named something like right? I forgot something, like it's in brackets, sync conflict. So what could we do to change that? Well, at Adobe, we have many great tools, and some of them are around since more than a quarter of a century. Tools that can and are being used to accomplish things they have never been designed for in the first place. So at Adobe, about 3.5 years ago, a team came together to design a design tool for designers. And it still blows off my socks. This is the first design tool designed for designers by Adobe. because this is a bitmap editor. What we did is we looked at our favorite pieces of flagship apps and decided to start from scratch. We wanted to completely reimagine a design tool from today's perspective, to build something modern and truly future-proof. What we built from ground up is now called Adobe XD. And with the XD, we aim to enable you to design at the speed of thought. Good defaults encourage good design. So on day 0, at the product's inception, a number of principles have been defined for XD that are core to the product and that drive our decision making. And at first, we had 7 principles. Now it's like 1.5 pages Google Doc, which whenever I look at it, like 30 people out of the team are looking at it as well. It really drives micro decisions. I just picked out 3. So first, XD aims to be lightweight and approachable. But at the same time, it has to be powerful and not limiting. The second, 0 friction. Performance and UI should feel invisible to the user. XD is direct and real-time, accurate and instant. We're not beholden to traditional Adobe UI. We took what's appropriate and we just ditched the rest. And the third, XD is transparent and open. The community is involved. You are being involved. We're open and responsive to feedback, update our users on feature and bug process, and our roadmap is publicly available. XD is fast and fluid while we're navigating around this set of artboards. Drawing is simple, precise, and vector-based, but pixel accurate. Changing the design as in this repeat grid, or adjusting those stars, which is just another repeat grid. Let me add my phone to the view here, where any edits made to the design are reflected in real time on the actual device. So let me go to prototyping mode here and wire up the home to the list to the detailed screen, and we can instantly test our work and see how it feels on the actual real device. XD allows you to do all the work in one tool and one file, from wireframing or lo-fi design over to hi-fi design, right into prototyping, and up to sharing your work with stakeholders to get their feedback, all the way down to developer handoff. We're currently completing the work on the design specs feature, which allows you to share a link with somebody simply using a browser to access the specs of your design, including the user flow, measurements, distances, colors, character styles, copy, interactions, and upcoming asset extraction and code snippets. And added, we recently started to open XD for interoperability with third-party applications. And that means you can totally use Zeppelin, ArvoCode, Simply.io together with XD if you prefer that over our own built-in design specs feature. Or just open Sketch or Photoshop files with XD. Fast Company has had a lot of positive things to say about XD. And my favorite quote from Fast Company is about the completely new product design process we are employing. And new as in new for Adobe, that is. And about the thousands of designers, independent designers, who are looped into that process in providing feedback to our pre-release programs and regular releases. And Fast Company called that a uniquely nimble and transparent approach from an industry behemoth. They pretty much nailed the last thing. So the core of my talk today is to share some specifics on that approach with you and explain where it has so fundamentally changed the way product is being designed and developed at Adobe. XD went through a couple of stages. So first, we released a beta by the name Project Comet, which got renamed into Adobe Experience Design in public preview, then in public beta. And with the public and official 1.0 release last October, we ditched the Experience Design in favor of just XD. Because simplify all the things, wherever corporate branding allows us, so to say. XD used to be available as a so-called beta version over 19 months. And what do you associate the term beta with? We all would probably associate beta with not there yet, right? So let me explain why this assumption did not match the beta of XD and how we managed to redefine beta, to be able to show our vision to the public, to be able to learn and to iterate. We all know this kind of beta software that has a lot of features, but lacks in terms of deep implementation, stability, quality, performance, all of that. So in software development, we have three, I don't know why it's always three, but we have three key parameters that come into play. Quality, time, as in time to release, and scope, which means feature set. On the XD team, we're using this own version of the magic triangle of project management, and we just call it the iron triangle. Because the logic, it is impossible to constrain more than two of the three parameters. Constrain scope and time, and quality suffers. Constrain quality and scope, and you just won't make the release date. Very often, the wish for the largest possible feature set built with limited time and resources would result in bad quality and also bad user experience. And this is what a typical beta release is all about. The first beta has all the features, but it does not have a deep implementation because it requires time to flesh out all the very details. Then subsequent updates are being released, aiming to add the missing qualities and details and, catch up in terms of completion and satisfaction. And this catch up, ladies and gentlemen, fails very often due to one specific reason. There is no solid foundation. No solid and well-engineered technical foundation, because how do you know what to prepare for when you have not taken the time to think through everything to its very detail? And no solid and well-designed user experience, because same reasons. So as opposed to churning out a fully fledged storefront based on our own assumptions, we made the decision to start our beta releases with a minimal feature set that shows depth and is well thought through to all those relevant details we wanted to validate. That shows a solid design and implementation, and that matches the quality standards we set for XD. And then, when we've heard back and can measure ourselves based on and build on top of those learnings, then we would go ahead and add functionality and detail, prioritizing by what is important to our users, one solid step at a time. So with that beta 1 in March 2016, we have delivered our vision of a product, but at the performance and user experience of a full release, just with less features. Since that first release, 19 months passed leading up to 1.0 in October last year, where we have and are iterating pretty quickly by releasing an updated quality release with improvements and added features every single month, which is quite a dense release cadence, especially in a large company like Adobe. What we believe is that this approach has allowed our users, you, to influence and shape the product while actually having a great experience. And we believe our decision to not trust our own assumptions, to leave out even the most obvious functionality, and to define those details first together is really key in building an awesome product. We did release 19 beta versions, or 18 beta versions in this case, of XD for macOS, 8 for Windows 10, 6 generations for iOS and Android to those stores that know no beta, before we move to 1.0. And we are continuing the same model by releasing quality updates every single month and by adding the functionality that our users requesting to focus us on next. That means, yes, we've not even started on some really obvious missing things. Up until December, we didn't have underlined text, for instance. And you'll miss out some functionality while we're busy adding that in. But hey, that's what you miss with every other of your current tools as well, working around by patchworking things together. So I told you how we redefined beta. But how did we manage to decide what to actually implement for beta 1? Saskia Widdeler, a designer from the Netherlands, has had that bit in her awesome talk at Web Expo in Prague, in Czech Republic last autumn, and I'm using that, I'm stealing it to remind you what actually happens when you assume. You're making an ass out of you and me. So what could be done to identify the true needs of our users better and more precise and on an ongoing basis? How could we ensure not to base our decisions on individual opinions? Well, we started off with the same method we're now using on an ongoing basis, serious user research. This is where we empathize, define, make something, show it, learn, and keep improving, you know that. User research at Adobe is handled by professional, full-time researchers embedded across our design and product management teams. So there are people that actually know what they're doing and doing that on a profound and mature basis, and I'm constantly learning from them, and I'm clearly not one of them. The other component of our research coming after that is being conducted by many roles across the team, and in my case, through the product management team. Let me call that extended user research. And this is also where we are more on the guerrilla side of methodology, so to say. So our research happens in form of workshops that build on top of what we know and learned before. Workshops at customers or at community meetings. And typically, we do, and might surprise you, we do focus groups building on top of what we already learned, and it works quite well in a ratio of like 1 interviewer to a maximum of 12 attendees. So we really max out that method. And we do it for around 2 hours. Normally, I would start with an introduction round where attendees just explain their current workflows and challenges. Typically, this organically leads into a very interesting discussion among attendees without me having asked a single question. It's a bit like a moderated interview, and it always almost leads into recording individual feature requests and discussing context and the relevance and vision for them within the group. It's quite fun to endlessly ask open-ended questions and see how people are challenging each other's ideas. Based on that current research and data we have and the most pressing questions from our team, I typically have a set of things I want attendees to reflect on. So there is a moderated interview component as well. The challenge is to make people think out of the box. If you ask any designer, if I would ask you how your favorite design tool would look like, well, the things I will hear will be based on learned behavior. Things you like from tools you already know. But we want to go much deeper than that. And to illustrate what we are talking about, I would show a quick demo, sometimes a prototype or only a concept. And quite stunning to ourselves, we found that actual printouts work best for A/B tests. You can just have people point at things, mark a cross, and then take it home and capture the data later. So don't even fuss around with and like sort of digital implementation of A/B tests. It's a waste of time, in our case. One thing we nearly almost use to help us prioritize what to do next is the so-called $100 test. I like to do that based on printed paper as well, since I can just, again, collect the papers later on. And on that paper is an unordered list of features or improvements or contexts around XD. And participants are being asked to spend virtual money on those items that are most pressing for them. They have to spend distinct and totally weird dollar bills, $40 on one thing, $25 on another, 20, 10, and 5 each on other features. And as a result, we get a prioritized list of the 5 most pressing issues. And when I'm interviewing a customer, like a team of people, that's where the fun starts. Because we ask them to do that individual first, and then we ask them to agree on it as a team, and this is where the fighting really begins. I transcript all of that, and later that goes into a research report and into our idea tracking system. Sounds sophisticated, right? But it's just Jira. So research reports are being tied back into feature planning, where we pull out the recorded ideas, and the process begins again. And by taking additional demographic data and by recording the experience level attendees have with XD, also by asking about team size and potential impact and reach for XD inside their organization, when these things have not been mentioned organically up front, I can map the recorded insights quantitatively. And this allows us to weigh in future work against revenue impact, which obviously, unfortunately, is one aspect in decision making. Prioritized user requests and feature ideas, but also these from our own backlog, would then be designed internally, discussed with a selected group of users, or implemented as prototypes and being discussed on our private pre-release programs first, before we even go into production. And the next step is to implement any validated features into the public beta and ask for feedback from the public. The inception part is we actually use XD to prototype XD, which can be a bit confusing sometimes. Just imagine being a designer designing a design tool inside the design tool you are designing for designers. Just clicking somewhere on the canvas and messing up stuff. Anyway, the whole team is working on taking and qualifying user feedback. And this is something we're taking from social media, comments to our blog post, Ask Me Anything on Designer News, or straightforward via email, but primarily via user voice. And here's a screenshot from, I think, 2 months old, showing our instance on user voice, adobexd.uservoice.com. It's more than 1,300, in the meantime it's 1,500 plus unique feature requests that came in those 2.5 years or 2 years since beta 1. 1,500 distinct ideas, excluding the ones we already shipped. Feature requests are being upvoted by the community, which influences directly what features will be addressed by us next. And as a team, we're then asking questions. We are refining those ideas. We're discussing details, and we provide status, completely transparent and in a dialogue with everybody. Layers are such an example. So on the team, we said that XD needs no layers panel. Our collective standpoint has been that you simply should not need such a complex abstraction layer to design with XD. Just think of layers in Photoshop or in Illustrator and how they add friction and complexity sometimes. I mean, look at that. Are you kidding me? Well, such an overhead should not be required to even create the most complex stuff within XD. And many pretty complex prototypes built by the community prove that to us, sort of. I've seen the visualization of an ATM, a cash machine, containing way more than 450 artboards without layers being available in XD. Well, but the people really wanted their layers back. Look at that thing. 812 upvotes and 65 comments to it. That's a pretty darn clear feature request, right? And how people envisioned layers inside XD in detail, well, that came through pretty clearly with that stream of comments to that feature request, where users are iterating on each other's ideas, challenge each other's concepts in such a constructive and professional way. It's really unbelievable. Again, we talked to people to find out more about the context they expect XD to support them with layers functionally, asking a lot of why questions. Like, why do you think we should add layers? And people were like, fuck you, you are Adobe, you are layers. Give me my layers back. And we were like, well, but why? So to wrap up the layers thing, we finally shipped layers for XD. But by default, the layers panel is hidden, so it won't get in your way. And if you really want layers, you just bring up the panel. And by the way, we used command Y as a shortcut, because why do you want layers? And layers in XD are context sensitive, only showing the elements involved to your current work focus. It is coming in the way the users wanted it, not in the way Adobe thought how layers should behave. And it came to XD because the users wanted it, and because we've left our own assumptions at the door. To wrap it up, with this approach in product development, we've unlocked two major things. First, rapid validation and iteration. While we do have our own opinions, assumptions are prohibited. By leveraging user research and ongoing user engagement, we're getting great feedback and are able to fail early. The second is user engagement. With every release, users are telling us their most pressing issues. We are prioritizing accordingly and deliver constant and relevant value add to the product by shipping monthly updates across 5 platforms. And that's it so far. We'd love to hear back from you how the improved XD is feeling to you these days. It's a free download. So not all of us are working on products that can unlock such a large user base for research, but don't worry so much about the numbers. What is important is that you're getting out of your building. Make that a standard behavior. And encourage your team to do so as well. And team means team, not just PM. Engineers, designers, researchers, legal, marketing. Spend at least 1 hour a day in talking to customers. That's the golden rule on our team. So maybe you need a little bit of budget as an incentive for attendees. But build your base of power users around your product and make sure to frequently check in with them on your latest plans and concept. Just do it. Don't assume what your users want from you. Just ask them. So, what about that bunk bed? Here's the production-ready beta I rolled out to my daughters after 3 weeks of building and pre-assembling parts. So the kids can't sleep on the floor just because it takes Dad more than 1 day to put the whole thing into place, right? For the first night, when they took the product for a spin, as you can see, still some planned features were missing, but the majority of it is actually real and solid. I've then added the less critical functionality over the next days. And that's the final thing delivered, including that nasty pull-out puzzle table. My kids loved it. And who knows, maybe they're going to become great designers later in their life. And will join a worldwide community of XD users just to find the product still living and breathing the same principles we apply for it today. I would really love that. Thank you, UX Alive, for having me here today, and thank you for joining in.